Well, hey, thanks for coming around for another episode of Breaking Kayfabe. I'm here today with one of the biggest names I've ever had on the show. You know him as the person behind the mind behind the Splat network. He goes by the name of Shep, and he's joining us here today to talk about, maybe in the entire history of the network. Shep, how you doing? Where do we want to begin with this?
Well, we can begin wherever we think we need to go. Um,
Well,
I'm
let's start with where are we today? What's the current situation?
so we're off the air, basically off the air. The network is still up. The website is still up there, running and available for anybody who wants to go revisit anything that we may have done. And I'm also going to be adding archive content in the future. But my main goal right now is to kind of polish up what's currently up there at present time. So be a little bit of re-editing some of the old content that maybe didn't get touched up as well as I had hoped, um, and and then we'll start throwing in some more archive content. I've got a lot of efed shows back from the '90s in my collection that I'm still trying to get put onto the website. So that's where we're at right now.
So, correct me. Tell me if I'm reading this correctly. I'm on the website. That's splatnetwork.com, and
Okay.
at the bottom corner of that page, it says copyright 1992 to 2023. That's
Correct.
31 years you've been doing this. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. My first introduction to it wasn't even called e-fitting. It was called fantasy wrestling. Was in 1992.
How does that happen? In
Well,
1992.
I mean that's even pre-internet days too. So
Yeah.
in 92, we the way we would communicate online with people is through what we call bulletin board systems. And there were different versions of bulletin board systems. And what I would do is I would connect to my phone line. We would dial into a local user's bulletin board system, and they have message boards or games and things like that. They're all text based. I mean, it's all text based stuff. So you're talking about ASCII graphics and old school stuff like that. But I started my own bulletin board system, and what you can do is you would connect to a main server through your modem, and you could subscribe your bulletin board system to what do you want to call? I would say they're very similar to like bulletin boards. So, and you would have different ones. And I happened to stumble across one that was called fantasy wrestling. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting. So I added it to my bulletin board along with a couple other wrestling ones too. And come to find out in 92, people were pretending to be real wrestlers and and writing out matches. And I had never seen such a thing before. It was pretty bizarre. And I'm like, okay, so that's when I first got introduced to fantasy wrestling. And it wasn't until '94 that I actually started my own, what we call EFED. Now we call it EFED. So my first EFED as a booker started in '94.
And I see that a lot has changed now.
A lot
So
has changed.
from where you started then, now you're doing movies and TV
Yep.
shows. You're doing
Yep.
mega super shows, 50-man battle royals inside a dome. You're doing what looks like a documentary series here. I
I do
mean,
have documentary series. Yep.
I as someone who enjoys the promotional side and enjoys the graphics. I mean, this the stuff that you've done is inspirational and just adds so much flavor to the hobby. Um, and you will be sorely missed. I think I can easily speak on behalf of the entire community that the game is less fun without you here in it and without your projects here. It has given us something to look forward to and has given a lot of people a platform that they would otherwise have not had. So you certainly deserve a pat on the back and a lot of respect for that. So thank you. And wow, who would who would have thought 1992 when I think that was the year Home Alone came out on DVD.
Yeah, I
Um,
think that sounds about. It might be a little bit earlier than that,
Kurt
but
Cobain was
yeah.
still playing guitar back then. And,
Oh, yeah, I think so. Yeah, yeah.
it's a different world.
It's a different world.
Um,
I yeah, I came. Let's see. It was probably around. Oh, my first exposure to the internet part of efetting was '95. That's when I first connected to the internet. And it still wasn't even called efetting then. I don't even know where the term efed came from. And through I don't even know how that started. It was always fantasy wrestling. It's kind of strange. I did take a bit of a break, but when I came back, all of a sudden it's efetting, and I'm like, oh, what's that? So yeah, it's definitely has evolved for sure.
Now, what's
Because
been
when I
go?
started, no, it's fine. When I started, it was people were pretending to be real wrestlers, not like actual wrestlers. They weren't creating their own wrestlers. So, and then when I started my Fed in '94, I was like, I don't want to do that. I want people to make their own characters, and so that's kind of how I came up with that. Is like I just wanted people to come up with original characters, and so that's how that started for me. And then even back then, it was like even back then, all my Fed was intergender. I never had a just a male or just a female Fed. It's always been intergender from day one with me. But I always found that part of everything to be kind of I don't know, important in some way, I think.
Yeah, I mean, if I remember correctly, I'm traveling back in time here, and in the late '90s, and I guess the early '90s as well. That those were the years of the wrestling magazine, right? The
Yep.
PWI would do the global
Yep.
rankings, and you could look at, if you were a WWF guy, how your guys compared to the WCW guys, and you had those dream matches in your head of, what if Sting and Hogan were in the ring together at the same time, um, and then in the late '90s you got to see that with the Monday
Yep.
Night Wars. There was some real crossover between the rosters. You started getting video games that allowed you to create your own wrestlers and do some of those things. And then you had the internet age with email and with chat rooms. Um, and there was just this explosion of fantasy online culture. It was really cool. It was the Wild West back then, right?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Everything
yeah.
was oversaturated, ridiculous, and fun and short lived. It
Yep. Short
was
lived. I was about to say that myself. It's like they came and they went. It was like they showed up, people would join, and then it wouldn't take long, and then they'd be gone and be like, oh, sorry, we're
yep.
done. Yeah. That's
Everything burned hot back then. It was
yeah.
really cool. People were, I mean, people talk about now people being overstimulated and not having a very long attention span. Well, the early days of the internet were very much like that because
Oh yeah.
everything was so fresh and new, and um, we were all figuring it out at the same time. It was really cool back then. Um, yeah, I'd like to relive those days. Um,
Oh yeah. And
so
it's funny because Google has an archive of the old fantasy wrestling what do they call it, a Usenet group or something like that. And now it's just full of spam. But if you go back to the beginning, and I think it goes back to maybe 95, I think. 95, I think it started. It goes back to then. You could see, like, you know, there are people dropping their cards there and having their shows. And then, like, you could, if you were looking for a Fed to join, you could post there and then people would respond to you. It's kind of like Twitter, but not quite as fast now. So,
Yeah. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about Twitter and efeder,
sure.
because I think a lot of people don't understand what efeder is and aren't really familiar with what your role has been with that project.
So, a couple of years ago, everyone was getting banned and all kinds of stuff off of Twitter, suspended, all that kind of stuff, and complaining, oh, Twitter did this, Twitter did that, you know. So I'm like, well, what if we had someplace that didn't quite have their little algorithms and things that, you know, would cause people to get suspended. And that's kind of where I came up with efeder, is that I wanted I wanted a place where people could go. They could say what they wanted to say in character, you know, to a point, and not worry about, oh, is a Twitter algorithm going to catch me and suspend me, or worse, you know, I've seen people's accounts get completely wiped out for saying stuff, you know. And so that was my goal. Um, we've almost hit 1,000 users, or characters, I should say, on that, um, on efeder. It's still a little slow going, and people really didn't catch on to it too much. But I don't see any reason to bring it down. It kind of just runs by itself. I just kind of weed out the spam bots, and there are people who use it. I mean, it's not super crazy, but there are people who do use it. So I don't see any reason why it needs to come down or anything like that, just because, you know, I'm stepping away. And I did add admin person to assist me, you know, if I'm not around so much. But yeah, that was my goal. I just want people to kind of feel safe going somewhere to, you know, role play, and so that's what it's there for.
Now, you're being very nonchalant about this, but I mean, you created a Twitter clone, which I don't think that I don't know anybody that would know how to just pick up and do that. So I'm sure that you have a skill set in your real life that has given you the knowledge on how to do something like that.
Well,
Um,
I'm an IT guy. I've been for the last, you know, 30 years. So, um, but the website is actually there's actually a I don't know what you call it, software behind it, called Woe Wonder, and it's fairly simple to use. I've had a couple people ask me about it, and I tell them where to get it. But I installed it. I did install it, customized it, and that sort of thing, and keep it running. So, and we've moved several servers trying to get it to where it's comfortable. But yeah, I I do IT work in real life. In my 21 years in the Army, I was IT for the whole time. So you learn quite a few things. And then even before that, before I went in the Army, I was creating web pages and things like that. I learned all that. I kind of took all that stuff on my own. You know, my early efed career, when I was, yeah, I kind of jumped into it as a booker first, like a Fed head, I guess you call it now. Um, First, because um, that's kind of what I wanted to do. I wanted to kind of book shows. I wanted to kind of create shows. And so my first Fed, once we went to the internet, I created my own web page for it, and everybody had a profile page for their character, things like that. It's pretty fun. So I've always been messing around with web pages and stuff like that. So um, yeah, so I do have a little bit of skill set there. So
Well, for the folks who haven't used eFetter before, it gives me the same vibes that I used to get from MySpace, and that's meant as a compliment, right? That
yeah,
it's simple in its design, and there's beauty in simplicity. Uh, I've heard a lot of gloom and doom about the new Twitter is going to be awful for the hobby, and it's great to have eFetter as as a resource if we decided to switch over. You're going to continue to keep eFetter running, although you're not going to be involved with eFetting itself.
yeah, yeah. Like I said, it just kind of runs itself. I just have to. I just check in once or twice a day with it and see if I had to delete a couple of escort accounts that popped in today. So yeah, and so, but mostly it's like most of the spam that we get is just junk mail. It's like you get junk mail. So people pop in, they post their little thing, and I go in, I delete them so that it's not there. So, but
Well,
it really runs itself. I really don't at this point.
you seem to be. I mean, you're good at what you do, right? And I'm sure that gives you a feeling of satisfaction. But there's something about the hobby that's not as rewarding as it used to be, which is, I assume, is why you're going to be phasing out. But along the way, you've worked on so many projects. I was hoping that you could talk about what some of your favorite projects were over the years.
Um, well, so all of my so my first wrestling special that we did um, was the tournament of mystery, and it was similar to how I did the calamity chamber, where it was video. It was video like that, and what we did was everybody who participated in this tournament of mystery. I think we had 16. I think there were 16 people involved in it initially. And what they would wear a mask. Everyone wore a mask and a full bodysuit to wrestle, so you couldn't tell who it was. Well, we would have three judges, and after the match, the winner obviously moved to the next round, but the loser which would face the judges, and they would try to guess who the wrestler was. And it was kind of like the Masked Singer, but for wrestling. And so there would be the judges would know what fed the wrestler belonged to, and then I would put in a few key moves that might hint at who the wrestler was. And then if they guessed correctly, well, there was nothing. But if the three judges nobody guessed who was under the mask, then that person got a prize, like a cash prize, on the way out. So and it was pretty fun. It was a 4 episode series that ended with Sierra Silver winning the multi universal championship for the. I mean, as the first champion for the multi universe, and everyone seemed to have fun with it. And then I guess like I don't know, a year later, like they tried to do it in real life, and it was like, hey, Splat did that. It was kind of fun. There is a conspiracy theory that real wrestling kind of keeps an eye on efetting and gets some ideas there.
I mean, if that's not true, then they're really missing out on an opportunity there, right? I mean,
Right. I think so.
if you want to keep your
I think so.
finger on the pulse, I mean, you follow
Right.
the most hardcore fans, especially the fantasy bookers.
Oh yeah.
Why not borrow from them? I don't think we care.
Nah. No, it's funny though because people will say, "Oh, wait a minute, didn't I see that in this such a efed that they're doing right now on WWE?" And it's just kind of funny. It's like this conspiracy theory, but it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
Well,
But
I think that's a sign that you're right above the target. You've got your finger on the pulse, and that you're on to something there, right? If more than one
right,
person has the same idea, it means that you get it. That that you guys are, you're tapped in,
right,
and that's good. That's a good thing.
and that's kind of what I wanted to do. Something I always wanted to do something that was not being done by anybody else. So that's when I came up with the Tournament of Mystery. Then we did the Triad Challenge, which was like a another tournament. It had 16 people as well. And then the first round, though, you would be randomly paired with somebody into a tag team match. Winners would move to the next round, and they face each other. And then there was a fatal four at the end for the finale. Um, so that was the Triad Challenge. And then last year we did the Unlucky 16 tournament, and what we did for that one was it was almost like a gauntlet, but there was a coin flip involved. So if you won your match, if you lost, you're out. But if you won your match, they would flip a coin. Heads, you move to the next round. Tails, you got to wrestle again immediately. And so you could have 5 or 6 matches in a row depending on if that coin liked you or not.
Sure.
Yeah, and so once we got to the very end, anybody left over moved to the second round, and we shuffle them up and start over until we came down to the final 2 or 3 on that one. So, but I've always tried to do things a little bit different because we only did things once a year, so I wanted to make sure they were kind of special. So,
Yeah, I think that the natural progression of your craft is very similar to what I'm experiencing right now. Um, and as I'm finding, I have more fun promoting other people's content and doing the booking and creating some of these special events. Um, I don't know that I can fill the void that you're going to leave when you go, but what kind of advice would you give to content creators who don't want to compete, but they want to just create content for other handlers?
I mean, it's you do what you're comfortable with. I mean, that's kind of what I did. Is like when I first my first foray into actually coming up with um, non wrestling content like our series and our movies and stuff like that. I had this character who I just brought back. Her name was Kantai, and she had this panda because I used uh, Tam Nakano as her base for a while, and in real life she was carrying around Panda, and so I utilized this Panda in wrestling matches to help my character win. And when I was even before I started Splat Network, it was called the OWA Network, and I used that site to post my Fed back from the 90s was called the OWA. And so I put all my archives in there. And then I had these other archives from other Feds that I had been involved with as well. I started adding all these different, classic archives. And then I don't even know how I came up with the idea, but I was like, this Kantai character would be kind of fun in a cartoon. And so my first series was actually an animated series called Kantai Panda Adventures. And it was very Saturday morning cartoonish, like Scooby Doo and those. It was kind of like
Sure.
that kind of role. Yeah. and they would each week, Kantai and Panda would have a guest wrestler, efed wrestler, on the cartoon. And then so instead of having their bases, they would have to pick a cartoon base to fit their character. And and it turned out to be pretty fun. I did 8 episodes, and I was gonna do 10, but I kind of just lost my inspiration for it after 8 episodes, and so it didn't quite go to 10. But that's kind of where Splat took off. It's like when before the first episode of that anti-series went up, I changed from OWA Network to Splat Network, and that's kind of how it was kind of born from there. And then my next series was called Prison City, which was kind of an original series that I created, based on, overpopulation in prisons. So what they did was they cordoned or put a big wall around a portion of the city and just threw all the criminals in there, and they could have at her. It's like the Wild West. They could do whatever. And so I created that series, and that if you see them. And then I really didn't have a lot of ideas, so I did a lot of comic book series, and then started doing some adaptations of other series and things like that. Just because I know people were kind of enjoying being, in a role, they wanted to be an actor, so we, gathered everyone who wanted to do it, and we just started pumping out content. And I was, for a while, I was doing 2 shows a week, and then I started feeling it. The I was getting tired.
Yeah.
I was getting tired, and my typing ability is fading. I can tell that my typing is not as sharp as it used to be, and I'm constantly backspacing and and hitting the wrong key, and it's annoying, and I'm getting frustrated, and it became not so fun anymore. And so that's when I figured, oh, maybe it's time. It's time to call it before I get, I don't want to get to the point where I hate it, what I'm saying?
Yep.
I don't want to get to the point where I hate it. So it was like, okay, well, let's put an end date on it. And I did, but then even at that point, I was like, I don't think I'm going to make it. I think I'm going to make it to the end date. So I pushed the end date up, and then I pushed the end date up again to Calamity Chamber, and I was like, okay, well, this has got to be it. Because I just don't think I can do it anymore. I don't have I have content, all the content, but I just can't type it anymore. I just can't type it anymore. So
So what are you going to do now? You're going to have this creative
yeah,
void now, and
yeah,
you sound like you're an idea guy, right? You get these
yeah,
random shower thoughts, or you'll think of
yeah,
something while you're driving, and then you got to put pen to paper to get it written down before you
yeah,
lose it.
yeah.
So
I
what's
don't know.
what's
I
next?
don't know. So I have some characters out there still, uh, and so I'm not looking to do anything like full time for any feds or anything like that. But I might do a couple of one offs, or a short feud or something like that. I don't know. To kind of stay involved a little bit, but I think as far as e-fitting, I think, and I'll probably still kind of keep an eye on things. I mean, I have my Twitter accounts and everything, so I'll probably just kind of watch how things go, and then if I feel that urge to jump into something, then maybe I'll go in for a few months and then pull back out. Long enough to run a feud, pull back out, and and run it that way. I think, but but I feel bad. I do feel bad because people were really enjoying this, and everyone was wanting to be a part of it, and I had things lined up for the rest of the year through next March, and I had to just cancel all of it because I just couldn't do it, and I feel bad because there were people involved who were going to be first time involved in something for Splat, and I feel like I let them down, and I'm sure they understand, and I'm not but I do feel like I did let people down. But
Well,
unfortunately, I have
that's
to
how
take care of myself. Yeah,
that's how e-fetting goes, right?
yeah,
People make promises on projects, and you have to be just hopeful that they deliver on those projects because they don't always come through. Feds don't stick around for years, and projects
yeah,
don't always happen. Super cards don't always happen. Results don't always come out, and everybody's been, um, everybody's seen something not complete, and that's
right,
okay. That's okay. You're really happy for the ones that do pay off,
right.
and more often than not, I mean, I think you have a pretty good track record. Is that your projects have paid off? You've said we're going to do this thing. Here's the timeline. It happens, and people are, it's very satisfying to get what you expected. Um, so if that's the legacy that you leave behind, you should be pretty proud of that.
Yeah, yeah, and we did some good stuff as a community. I think. Um, I don't have any real regrets. I do wish I could have gone a little bit longer, but I think I'll be 56 years old next month, and and I'm feeling it. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna start actually doing some traveling here pretty soon. Next year, we've got a trip planned, and probably start doing annual vacations, visiting other countries. I've always kind of wanted to do that, so I think we're going to start doing some of that. And I've already kind of got the next four trips planned out where I want to go. So
Well, hey, man, I think that's awesome. I think anyone who is uh, middle aged and is still e-fetting is starting to make plans for, how long am I going to be doing this? And to see somebody else get out on their own terms is a good thing. It's encouraging. So I think everybody's happy for you. I can't promise that I won't reach out for some consultation on some of my own projects. So I hope you
yeah,
don't mind.
anybody can reach out to me. I'll be around. I'm not disappearing or anything like that. There's no disappearing going on here.
Yeah.
So, and I will definitely be around.
Well, hey, we're getting pretty close to the time, but I want to open up the floor for anything else you want to cover. I know we could probably go another 2 hours talking about all the projects you've been involved in. So I will make the invitation if you want to come back for another interview in the future. All you have to do is say so, and we'll book another 30 minutes. But for today, who else would you like to shout out to? What other projects would you like to mention?
Um, well, let's see. I'm probably going to start establishing a affiliate page here for Splat so that we can kind of keep an eye on what feds are active and what feds are not active and things like that. I may try and do something like that. Um, and then I mean, there's so many people who have been involved in Splat stuff. It'd be impossible for me to kind of list anybody. But everyone who ever took part in anything that we did, I mean, you don't even know. I didn't know how this was going to go. I really didn't. And for it to end up as big as it did, I mean, that's because people wanted it to succeed, and that's the only reason we ended up going for 4 years in the first place. And we could probably keep going if I could. We could keep going. There's still that much interest in what we do, and so I just I'm always appreciative of those who involve themselves in the things that I created. It was just fantastic. And so I'll just say thank you to those people who did, and those people who may have wanted to but just never got a chance to, and those who were going to but couldn't in the end because I had to cancel some things. And the stuff that we did will stay on this website forever probably because it's not going anywhere. I'm not. Same thing with efed. It's not going anywhere. People, if they want to use it, they're more than welcome to use it. And I hope that people get tired of the politics on Twitter. They know they have somewhere to go if they want to, and that's let me give that address efeder.net for anyone interested. Splatnetwork.com if you want to see any of the archives. We'll be adding more archives eventually. Here, I just got to format some. I got a bunch of plain text stuff that I got to format. But we're gonna, it'll always be there for anyone who, if you never got a chance to read something that we did, feel free. We want people to enjoy it.
Well, that's where we're going to call it a day. So, on behalf of Shep, the handler of the Splat Network and many other projects over the years, the OWA and several efed characters, and on behalf of the Sauce Boss and This Is Awesome Promotions, thanks for coming around for Breaking Kayfabe. Um, If you haven't had a chance, check out some of the other interviews that we've done this week, last week. I think we're up to about 20 interviews now. So appreciate you tuning in here. And until next time, just continue being excellent to each other. Keep, party on, and we'll see you all again down the road.